अस्सलाम वालेकुम नाज़रीन, क्रिटिकल टॉक में खुश आमदीद। नाज़रीन, दुनिया जीअं जीअं ग्लोबलाइज़ थींदी पई वञे तीअं तीअं अराउंड द ग्लोब जेके माण्हू आहिनि उहो हिक ॿिए सां सोशो कल्चरली इंटरमैंगल थींदा पिया वञनि ऐं अहिड़े तरीक़े सां दुनिया जेका आहे उहा थ्रू आउट द नॉर्म्स ऐं थ्रू आउट द कल्चर्स हिक ॿिए सां मिलण पई वञे। अॼु हिन प्रोग्राम में असांजो जेको महिमान आहे उहा आहे तबिया उथमैन फ्रॉम द जर्मनी ऐं शी इज़ अ ट्रैवलर and she has been traveling throughout the globe. अॼु असां हुन खां पुछंदासीं त एज़ अ ट्रैवलर तव्हां दुनिया खे कीअं पिया ॾिसो ऐं मतिलबु तव्हां दुनिया में जॾहिं ट्रैवल करणु शुरू कयो ऐं तव्हांजो शख़्सी परसेप्शन जेको आहे उहो तव्हांजो कीअं ब्रॉड थी वियो ऐं कीअं दुनिया जेको आहे हींअर ग्लोबलाइज़ थींदी पई वञे एंड शी हैज़ विज़िटेड मोर देन लाइक 5 or 6 countries. So Tabia, you're welcome in our show. So first let us know, how did you come to know about the Pakistan?
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to here. As you said, I'm from Germany, so from a very young age, my parents, they took me to different countries, which means I was exposed to different cultures. And then I was able to study in various countries. I went to a school in India, I went to a school in Bolivia. And somehow I started traveling. So I would go for like weekend trips in Europe because I was relatively young back then. And after I finished school, I was maybe 18 years old. So back then I wanted to travel, but my parents, they told me I should go to university, I should get a degree. So that's what I did. I did my bachelor's, I did my master's, and every now and then I would travel to different countries. I would do internships abroad. I would have holidays, for example, and I extensively traveled around Southeast Asia. I traveled around the Middle East. Around Europe, for example, I was in East Africa, South America. But I was always interested in going to Pakistan because I saw the pictures of how Pakistan looks like. I saw the landscapes. And I was several times to India, and people were always telling me that Pakistan is also a very interesting country to travel to. So then I looked it up, I did some research, and one thing led to another. I ended up here in Pakistan.
So here I would ask you a question that you told that you heard a perception about the Pakistan. What the perception you had before you are here?
Honestly, I was very unsure about coming here. I was telling my friends about me going to Pakistan. I asked my friends, hey, do you want to go with me? And you know, from a German perspective, we don't hear that much about Pakistan, and when we see it in the news, they portray it in a rather negative way. They usually focus on the politics, for example. However, because I've traveled to so many other places where I received a high level of hospitality, I thought, okay, I could also go to Pakistan and see myself how the country is, how the people are. And I also met a few Pakistanis in the past few years. So, for example,
They're in Germany.
Exactly. For example, in Germany, I worked with a few Pakistanis. Also, when I was studying, I did some group projects with them. So I contacted them. I asked them, hey, what do you think about me going to Pakistan? Would it be safe? And everyone was very welcoming. Even though some of them weren't in Pakistan themselves, they said that I could stay with their families. They invited me over to their places. And they even welcomed me back in Germany to go and meet them in person and, you know, try some Pakistani food before I even came here. And now I arrived a couple of days ago in Karachi, and so far I like it a lot. I feel like it's a very dynamic and vibrant city. I also feel very safe, which I honestly didn't expect. It's obviously very, very crowded.
There's a question, you know, I have now at this point. You know, as you told, like as you're saying that the perception that media is showing abroad about the Pakistan is somehow, to be very honest, not good. But you are the tourist and you are the traveler. It would be really good message for the, like, you know, the people who are watching you. So you say that Pakistan is really hospitable. You know, the Pakistani government has ever been trying to promote the tourism. So what the message you will, you know, you will give to those people as the potential of tourism Pakistan has?
Honestly, I would say it's not the easiest country to travel to. So, for example, if you're from Germany, obviously it's easier for you to travel to Spain, to travel to Italy. It's much closer. It takes some courage to say, hey, I want to go to Pakistan, especially when you're alone. But once you actually make this decision, once you book your flight and once you land in the country, you'll be surprised by how hospitable people are. I've been staying with a local family here in Karachi, and they've been super, super nice. We had some language barriers. However, we try our best to still communicate. They make sure that I eat more than enough food. And they also introduce me to their neighbors, to their friends, and everyone is like really making sure that I'm okay, and they continuously ask me if I need anything. So once you actually make the decision to get yourself out there, to get yourself to Pakistan or even any other country, you'll be surprised by how positive your experience will be.
And now let's come on the Karachi especially. So what actually, from the tourism perspective, what you heard about the Karachi before you're here?
Honestly, I didn't hear much about Karachi. I didn't even plan to travel to Karachi in the first place. I only heard about Lahore. And then I looked up places I could travel to. I did some research. And then I saw, okay, Karachi, it's at the seaside. It's the biggest city here in Pakistan. And it's actually one of the biggest cities in the world. So obviously there must be something to see, something to explore. And I was also very interested in the Sindh culture. I wanted to listen to the language. I'm very interested in languages. Obviously, I don't speak any Sindh, but still. Yeah, and now that I'm here, I'm already planning to come back one day because I'm amazed by the city. I feel very, very safe here. I feel very welcomed by everyone. And it's a beautiful city, I would say. It's at the seaside, so I've been to the beach a couple of times. I watched the sunset. I tried really, really good food.
Now, this is a common, have you ever heard about the cultural shock that people feel when you're in a stranger country? Have you ever felt like this thing in the Karachi or like this?
Not at all. Honestly, I kind of expected that I might feel a cultural shock, that it might be very overwhelming, especially because back in Germany, I'm from a small village. It's very green, it's very calm, it's very, very peaceful. There are like no people around. And it's a very simple and easy life I live back there. However, once I got here, obviously it's different from Germany, it's different from Europe. However, people have been super, super responsive, super helpful. So even when I faced some minor problems, some issues when it came to the language, or for example, I didn't know the way, I would ask someone, and then there were like 5 people ready to help me out.
Okay. So now I would ask you about the Indus civilization, Sindh. Have you ever heard about this province or civilization? Because Indus civilization is the contemporary of the Egyptians and Chinese in the past, like 500, maybe 3000 BC, you can say, or like 5000 BC. So this is the contemporary civilization of the Egyptians and Chinese. Have you ever heard about? So have you ever heard about the Indus civilization before?
Honestly, no, I haven't. But now that I'm here, I'm reading more about it. Also, people tell me more about it, and I would be very much interested to learn more about it. And that's also one of the reasons why I would like to come back, because this time, unfortunately, I'm only visiting Karachi. But I believe there are many other cities and other areas to visit here.
Okay. So now, Tabiha, from this all over the discussion, we have the point now. You know, we have the point like this, that as long as the world is getting globalized, so people are getting intermingled. This is the topic of today's show. So, because their perception is getting changed and their way of thinking getting changed. So, how would you tell us that how the perception of traveler is going to be changed from the personal to the broad? How the perception of a traveler burdens?
That's a very good question. So I would say for me personally, I learned a lot from traveling, especially when it comes to soft skills. So for example, I learned how to do problem solving. I've become definitely more confident, more resilient, also more adaptive, you know, because you are exposed to so many different cultures, to so many different people that are just not the same as you are. But then once you actually meet those people and you meet them on a more personal level, so after the small talk, you actually have a proper conversation with them, you realize that in the end you're not that different from them. Eventually you have different norms, you have different values, you grew up with different backgrounds, you speak a different language. However, in the end, we all perceive the world in our own ways. However, we do have our families, we do have our friends around us, we want them to be safe, we want to love them, we want to do something in life. And especially now with globalization, we become more and more similar. And that's
in what perspective actually I asked this question? Because everywhere people are saying that world is getting globalized in only one perspective. This is a social, not scientific innovation, science and technology perspective. As long as you are growing in the science and technology perspective, so people understand and people get it like that we are globalized. But the actual globalization is understanding the essence of life, understanding the feeling of life from all around the corner of the world. When you have the same norms of what you feel, how you perceive, and what norms you have. So do you think world is really getting globalized in this perspective, socio-cultural perspective?
Yes, I do believe so. We have the scientific changes which allow us to connect with each other more and more.
Communication, technology,
exactly.
yes.
For example, we have social media. Me as a traveler, I extensively use social media to get in touch with other travelers, but at the same time also to get in touch with other locals. And now when I travel, that's like my priority, to exchange my own culture with other cultures, to meet other people. For me, it's always very important to meet especially families, to see how families live, how they follow their everyday life. I like to cook myself, so I like to cook with the mothers or when it's the father who's cooking. And in that way, I do believe there's a social cultural change.
Social cultural change.
Yes, yes.
And the other thing is like, how can you perceive a social cultural change? I would say socio-political change. This is the perception you have from the political landscape as well. From the political perspective, we are being driven in from different perspectives, from the governments, from the liberal democracies. This is the whole info, the flow of info is always being controlled from these so-called governments and liberal democracies. Do you have any suggestion for any kind of the government things or like any kind of the controlling authorities to mobilize the things in such a way that the people get more and more closer? What are the main suggestions you have?
I do believe that governments should work closer together with the people, but also with different governments from other countries to promote how we perceive the world and also to promote connecting people from different places. So, for example, in Europe we have this program, it's called Erasmus, with
Great.
which we are able to study in other European countries for like 1 year. And it's funded by the European Union, and it's at the same time also by the local governments, the national governments. So I do believe if you tell the government, oh my God,
to promote the tourism, to promote
yes.
These exchange programs, educational programs?
Yes, yes, especially if it starts from a young age.
Yes.
So, for example, I was able, when I was 14 years old, to go to India, to New Delhi, and I was living with a host family back then. And then 1 year later, I went to Bolivia, also back there. I was living with a host family. I was very, very young. My family in Germany was very concerned about me. However, I believe these experiences, especially at such a young age, they really shaped me, and because of these experiences, I'm actually sitting here right now. And then, if you have these opportunities...
Now, I'm going to expand your idea. I'm going to expand your idea in a sense that, there are 3 major areas where do people, dispense the hatred. This is the race. Some on the basis of color racism, religion thing, religious extremism, and the most important is the ethnicity, your race, your ethnic group. Religious, color racism, and the ethnicity groups. These are the basic parameters for the dispensing the hatred by these political things, political governments. As you told that the basic suggestion is like to starting the exchange programs like education, tourism and cultural exchange programs. So how would you suggest the governments to expand these programs in this way? As you told that you are also the you have been also the part of these programs.
Yes, exactly. So we mainly have these programs in Europe so far. However, we also do have lots of international students coming to Germany, coming to Europe. So for example, I myself did my bachelor's from the Netherlands, I did my master's from Sweden. And in those countries I was also exposed to many different cultures. And I do believe, especially now that we live in a globalized world, which is connecting more and more, it's important to expand these opportunities, and it's also important for parents to actually support their children if they want to go abroad, because it will change their perception of how they see the world, and it will definitely broaden their mindset.
Hi, yeah. Now let's come on again. You are here in the Karachi. You know, to be very honest, like you hear lots of positive vibes about the Karachi. You have lots of good experience. You have, and it's of course it would be too ideal that you can't have the negative experiences. And I would really and honestly like you to share some negative experience from the Karachi you have, because it would be the suggestion for authorities here to reduce these things and promote the tourism.
Well, generally speaking, my experiences here were very positive because I was able to meet some locals and they took me out, they showed me around. However, I did feel a bit overwhelmed when I first got here. For example, I went to the old quarter, which is Sadr, I believe. So I did feel that people were like looking at me. And they were curious of what I was doing there, but they didn't like approach me or anything. So I believe if more tourists actually come to Pakistan, then people would be used to seeing foreigners, to seeing more tourists, and it would help both sides. It would be very comfortable for the tourists and at the same time also for the locals to be exposed to other cultures.
Okay, so now being a tourist, being a traveler, being a the perseverant, whatever of the excellence. What are the major 5 points you would suggest the Pakistani government and even the Karachi government to promote the tourism?
Wow, that's a very, very good question. So first of all, I believe it's, let me think. Well, you first need the infrastructure for tourism.
Great.
Which means Pakistan is a big country, so you need to make sure that people can travel from place A to place B. So for example, in a few days I'm flying to Lahore. However, I did hear that there are some trains, but then for me personally it was difficult to find out how to book these trains, how to actually get onto these trains, how safe these trains would be, since I'm a female solo traveler. So yeah, if you can work on the infrastructure, that's
transport.
Number one, yes. Then there are some language barriers for me. I speak English, I speak German, but that's it. So I experienced that many people here, they speak at least some basic English, you know. But like when I try to eat in local restaurants, sometimes it was a bit difficult to explain to them what I want to eat. And you see lots of signs only in Arabic language. So it's always a bit confusing for me, but then I totally understand.
Okay, third one is the language, very good. And the fourth one?
You can promote Pakistan internationally more, so you can maybe portray the country in some newsletters, in national TVs.
Yeah, promotion of your country, heritage sites, cultural sites, you should promote these sites. And there should be some, the inter-exchange programs.
Yes,
the historians and tourism should visit on the exchange basis, and on this one. And what about the fifth one?
And I think the last point, you can simply tell people that it's a beautiful country. Because lots of people, they don't expect it from Pakistan, you know. People don't really have an idea how Pakistan looks like. I would be really excited to go to the north, to see the mountain areas, to go to Hunza Valley, to Fairy Meadows. Since I'm here in winters now, unfortunately I can't go, but I'm already planning to come back in summers just to see the beautiful landscapes.
Ji, welcome back, Nazreen. Yeah, Tabia, now I have the question in a broad way about the difference between the Asia and Europe, as long as you have been traveling throughout the different Asian countries. So first, what are the main differences and the points you will tell us about the main difference?
I lived my whole life, or most of my life, in Europe. However, I did travel around Asia for a couple of years, and I lived in different countries in Asia. So what I experienced is that people in Europe, especially in Germany, they are very individualized in a way that, for example, after we finish school, we usually go to university, we move out of our homes, we try to be independent by ourselves. And even I moved out at a relatively young age. You know, I had my own apartment. However, what I noticed in Asia is that the families, life centers around the families, which means whenever I'm in Asia and I meet like people, I'm always introduced to their families.
I have just a point question here. Do you believe that, getting out of the family systems is really, how would you perceive it? Like, is it good to be in the family system, or is it good to be in the individual system? What are the pros and cons effects of this getting out of the system for the Europe?
I believe it would be very important to stay close to your family, because that's basically your whole background. That's where you came from. So if you move out, and if you don't make sure that you stay close to your parents, for example, you lose some kind of, your basic foundation, you lose
Yes.
it. You lose the way you were growing up, and also you lose like cultural aspects, for example. So now I live back at home, back in Germany. I live with my family, and right now I honestly love it, because I'm very close to my parents, I'm very close with my siblings, so we cook together, you know, and I could sense, or I could see that it's kind of similar here in Asia, in a way that people live in big apartments and big houses, and you have several generations living together. You have the grandparents, you have the parents, you have the children, and they all take care of each other, which is very important. So you have the generational change, which is clearly visible. And that's also one of the problems in Europe, in Germany, because our society is getting older and older, and there's no one like really taking care of the older generations, because when people move out of their home, they want to be more individualized, and they focus on their own career, they focus on their own life, they focus on what they want to do in their own life and how to achieve their own goals.
So just tell me about these 2 or 3 drawbacks that Europe is suffering getting out of this family system. What are the 2 or 3 major drawbacks? Like, you get isolated, you can lonely, and you get somehow, is it right that depression ratio is also increasing because of this getting out of the family system?
Well, I don't know so much about the depression ratio, but I do believe that people feel lonely, especially initially after they move out of their apartments, because at a young age they have this idea, okay, I'll be by myself, I have all the freedom I want, and maybe they enjoy it for a few days, for a few weeks, for a few months, and then they realize, okay, hey, I have a family, and maybe family life isn't that bad after all. And then some of them, they move back home. So for example, me, I moved back into my house, and I now live with my family.
Okay, so you mean like it depends, it varies culture to culture?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so now let us on other major differences that you can find between Asia and Europe.
Well, there are some differences when it comes, of course, to culture, to religion, to languages. We have different norms, we have different values. For example, as a German, we are very organized people, we are very structured people. However, what I saw here in Asia, here in Pakistan, people are very, very flexible. People work very flexible. So for example, in Germany, when we have like fixed schedules we work. So for example, from 9 to 5, and once it's 5 p.m., we are like, okay, it's 5 p.m. and I have to go back home. What I noticed here in Asia is that people often work after hours. People put in lots of efforts into their work, and well, they get rewarded, yes, but life here in Asia centers around the work.
Okay, so another thing is like, the main thing is people do always perceive that is Europe really getting out of the religious things? Like most people are getting, secular or liberal or, atheist day by day. Is it right?
I wouldn't
What's
say,
the reason behind this?
I wouldn't say many people become atheists, but religion doesn't play a major role in our everyday lives. So in our elder generations, it was very important. I know that my grandparents, they still go to church every week. However, we as a younger generation, we don't value it that much anymore.
What's the reason behind this?
Well, we are exposed to so many other things nowadays. We have social media, we get distracted, and we tell ourselves we don't have time for religion anymore, and then also we are exposed to so many alternative ways to spend our time with.
I actually perceive this actually getting out of the religious thing in the sense of intellect, you grow more. But you say that in what perspective? Because more and more you get intellectual, or more and more getting you get like, we can say educated or exposed to lots of the revolutions and facts and figures, less you get to be believer in the, myths. So don't you believe is this the same as is in the Europe? Like you get more exposed to the facts.
Well, that's also a very good point.
And knowledge and info.
There definitely is a relation between your level of education and your level of religion, how religious you actually are. Because if you are like less educated, I would say you need something to hold on to, something you can, something you believe that might help you to change something in your life. However, the more educated you are, the more you see that it's also up to you. And I wouldn't say I'm myself an atheist, but I'm not that religious. So I don't see myself going to church. And from my own perspective, I believe if I want to change something in life, it has to come from me.
And the other point that I have in mind is government role. The role of government in your, daily life welfare. Because people do get all these things because they believe in that all the welfare is being done from the majestical and, powers, mysterious powers. But as long as in Europe, governments are playing very good role in the people's welfare life. Isn't also the point that
Exactly. Social welfare is very, very high.
Yeah, social welfare.
In Europe, so like even if you struggle finding work or something, you would get support by your government. They would provide you an apartment, they would provide you financial support. And I'm not sure if it's the same way in Asia or in Pakistan. It must be different.
So from your perspective, that role of government, getting people educated and getting people exposed to more international things actually makes you like less conservative and less dogmatic and fundamentalist in every perspective. So this is Tabia, and Tabia, thank you so much for joining us. And जी नाज़रीन, ये हुआ ताबिया के views about the globalization, socio-cultural transformation, and the potential of the tourism the Pakistan has, and intercultural exchange. So मिलंदासीं कंहिं नए प्रोग्राम में वरी कंहिं ॿिए नए महिमान सां. तेसीं ताईं ॾियो इजाज़त. अल्लाह भाई.